To roast pigeons. By no means roast them on the poor man's spit with the fix hooks at the end. For this reason, the backs of the pigeons will be raw when their breasts are roasted. Then they are all to be turned their backs to the fire. Besides the danger of dashing the pigeons against the bars by the swinging of the string, as they must be untractable rope dancers. Lay them warm to the fire with parsley and butter in their bellies. Let them have a clear fire, and the long spit against the beggar's spit, most gravy for any money. Let the sauce be parsley and melted butter. In the chapter of roasts and boils, the lady teacher has recommended the twining band as the best way to roast a pigeon, and in her second chapter of made dishes is the piece of iron with fix hooks at the end, on which the pigeons are to be roasted. And where she, this teacher says, the pigeons will swim with their own gravy, although reason told me the contrary, yet I was fool enough to believe that there might be some magic art in the long string tied to the chimney top, by which art the pigeons might receive so much more gravy than any other pigeons ever known to have. So I fulfilled the order, for I filled the pigeon full of butter and parsley, tied the string, according to order, to the chimney, and when I had performed all this operation with a pigeon, I found less gravy in it than there would have been if it had been roasted in the common way. Besides, this single pigeon had double the advantage of the 6, as it had all the fire playing round it as it was turning, which part I very diligently performed, as at that time I had a proper kitchen, which was my bedchamber, whose chimney-piece was very suitable for a poor man's spit. Now, as one pigeon was so far from answering such a quantity of gravy as to make it swim, how much worse will the 6 hang on 6 hooks? For the fire can but play half round them, for their breasts must screen their backs, or their backs must screen their breasts, so that by turning them must consume their juice. But if the pigeon be done by the skilfullest cook in the universe, still it is but a pigeon, and cannot discharge gravy to make it swim in the dish. But the poor man's spit is a destroyer of the gravy, and not a preserver of it. And as to fowls roasting, to tell to a minute the time they take roasting, there should be an exact distance from the fire, for the illiterate and ignorant may very easily err in proportioning the proper distance of the spit from the fire, and in case you be so fortunate as to find it out, you may do very well in roasting a large turkey and a small one. Likewise, in roasting a goose, the same may be observed. But if it is a clear fire and at a proper distance from it, the goose will lose her gravy, for an hour will roast the best goose I ever saw. By her rules for roasting there is an hour and a quarter, and no fowl is so insipid as a goose, served up without her gravy. I had a very worthy guest that did practice the law, was a critic in no part of cookery but in a goose roasting, and he would see the fire and the goose laid down, and never allowed more than 45 minutes. He had his watch by him, and would not let the goose have 1 minute more than the above 45 minutes. Then there was a dish full of the gravy of the goose. By these rules a wild duck is to have 10 minutes roasting. Woodcocks, snipes, and partridges will take 20. Now suppose there is woodcocks and wild ducks for dinner. The ignorant and illiterate are by these rules of their teacher to lay the woodcocks to the fire 5 or 10 minutes before the ducks, and if the ducks are well roasted, the woodcocks must certainly be overmuch, for a woodcock will but take half the time of a wild duck's roasting. As to roots and greens boiling, why a wooden vessel is not proper to wash or lay the greens in, for dust and dirt may hang round a pan as well as a pail, and a pail is more common to wash or lay greens in for kitchen use, and may be sooner cleaned than a pan. No meat is to be boiled with the greens, for that discolors, but I rather think that the greens would discolor the meat. Use no iron pan to them, for they are not proper, but let them be copper, brass, or silver. I think I durst venture a wager to boil greens in an iron pan, as well as this lady teacher shall boil in a silver one. All sorts of young sprouts is by this teacher's order to be boiled in a great deal of water, and when the stalks falls to the bottom they are enough. I differ from the teacher in boiling young sprouts in a great deal of water. Old sprouts or winter cabbage will take a great deal of boiling, but young sprouts, the less water and the closer they are boiled, the brighter green they will be. But if young sprouts are put into a great deal of water and boiled till the stalks fall to the bottom, the sprouts will be boiled very yellow, which will make a very bad appearance amongst a company of gentlemen and ladies at a table. In parsnips boiling, they require a great deal of boiling, and you may know when they are soft by running a fork into them. A fork may get entrance into a parsnip before it is boiled at all, although it will not enter so easily as when it is boiled soft, which you may know as well by your finger and thumb pressing it, and the fork may not be so ready. After they are boiled, they are to be taken up, and all the dirt to be carefully scraped off them. But I advise you to scrape all the dirt off them before they are put into the pot to boil, were it but for the sake of your hands, for you will find it much easier scraping a cold parsnip than a boiling hot one. Besides, it is more like a good housewife to wash and scrape the dirt off them before they are boiled. The boiling a cauliflower is ordered by this teacher to be cut in 4 and boiled in a saucepan, then taken up and 1/2 stewed in a hash pan, in a pan full of water, a dust of flour, and 1/4 pound of butter. But my advice is to boil the cauliflower in clean water. Make sauce of the 1/4 pound of butter, and send up the cauliflower in a dish, and the butter in a sauce basin. For this reason, the 10 minutes which is ordered to stew the 1/2 of the flour will perhaps starve the other half. This is saving trouble and likewise butter, for if the flour be turned and shaked according to her order, the stewed will take up all the butter, and there must be more butter drawn for the boiled half of the cauliflower, as the hash pan will take tribute of the butter. In dressing artichokes, you are ordered to wring off the stalks, and put them in cold water with the tops down, that all the dust and sand may boil out, and 1 hour and a half will boil them. But my advice is to cut the stalks from them, and wash off all the dust and sand before they are put into the pot, and not to trust to the water boiling the sand and dust out of them. For instead of boiling out the sand and dust, and twitch-bells, which are often lodged there, the boiling may obstruct the passage, and I am apt to think that it would rather boil them further into the artichoke. If this advice be reasonable, take it. If not, thy will be done. But it is amazing to me that the lady should order burnt butter for thickening sauces, or to boil butter in a pan till it is brown, and stir flour into it till it is thick, and to put it by and keep it for use. She likewise makes use of this for thickening and browning sauces, and adds that there are few stomachs that they agree with, therefore it is seldom to be used. But my advice to you is, never to use it at all. Don't give thy master or lady a known offender to the stomach, for in so doing you destroy their appetite and impair their health. And consider what a risk you run in giving offense to great ones, notwithstanding you have got your teacher's commission to use it seldom. 'Tis as much to say that if the family pleases me, they shall not have burnt sauces. But if they vex or disoblige me, they shall meet with a burnt butter stomach tincture, which by standing a little time will be as strong as whale oil. So has this lady instructor taught her pupils, to revenge themselves on their superiors, if offended. In page 24 is a white fricassee. To boil 3 chickens tender in milk and water, and to throw away what they were boiled in. But my advice is to let alone the milk, and carefully preserve the chicken broth, it being a cordial to a tender stomach, or is a help to rich broths. But throwing the broth away is doing an injury to your master and mistress, and although some are of opinion that milk and water boil the chickens white, I aver the contrary. Milk will curdle and boil them blacker than water alone. I have seen great want of one single chicken for the sake of the broth, and could not be had for love or price. And does this answer the thrifty lady teacher's proposals and pretenses? In page 29 is a breast of veal in hodgepodge. Cut your breast of veal into small pieces, and fry it brown with half a pound of butter put into a stewpan, and filled up with water, green peas, hot spices, sweet herbs, lettuce, and onions. If no peas, 3 or 4 cucumbers, celery. And if no lettuce, cabbage sprouts. And if you would have a very fine dish, fill your lettuce with forcemeat, and tie the tops close with thread. Place your lettuce in the middle, and the meat all round it. Then pour on your sauce. Thus the lady orders her delicate dish, and says it will serve abundance of people. And I believe it will, and have plenty of fragments remaining. The lady is a little out of her element touching her lettuce binding, for before the meat can be done, the bindings of her lettuce will be unloosed, in spite of all her profound wisdom in cookery. In page 31st is to collar a breast of mutton. Do it the same way, and take off the skin, and it eats very well, says the lady. And likewise prescribes another way of cooking mutton, by collaring it as above, and basting it with half a pint of wine, and when it has drunk the wine well up, baste it with butter and gravy. But in my opinion, the mutton will be so strongly intoxicated with the wine that it will be apt to loathe the butter and gravy. And the lady further adds that the inside of a sirloin of beef is very good done the above way. And if you don't approve of wine, a quart of milk and 1/4 of a pound of butter to baste the inside of your sirloin. Here I disagree with the celebrated instructor, and advise you not to fuddle the mutton with wine, nor take out the inside of the sirloin of beef, which is the most juicy part of it, nor surfeit it with milk, nor spoil a good roasting piece of beef by robbing it of its most delicious part. In page 34, to force the inside of a sirloin of beef, she orders to take out all the flesh to the bone, but I advise you by no means to take it from the bone, because after thou hast taken the flesh, and made forcemeat with suet and bread, how then wilt thou get this fine meat to stick to the bone again? A fillet of beef, of a steer, or spaved key, or a thorough-fed cow, will weigh 8 or 9 pounds, besides the suet, bread, and other ingredients, thus laid on the bone again, the fat skewered down upon it, and over that a paper. Yet notwithstanding, the forcemeat will make way through fat and paper into the dripping pan. Although the teacher's order is not to let the paper be taken off till the meat is in the dish, yet the fat and paper will not have strength to bear up the forcemeat, so that fall it must, if it be done as this teacher orders. There is much labor lost, and the sirloin is disfigured. Besides, the fillet would have been better plain roasted, than by all this stupid, expensive art of the lady teachers. I come now to show the extravagancy of the rolled rump of beef. For there is the flesh of 2 fowls, beef suet, cold ham, and abundance of other items. But you will gain more credit by keeping the rump whole, and save your master's charges. For by page 35, the rolled beef is to boil 8 or 10 hours in a pot that can just hold it, and yet this pot is to be filled with water. but as the bones are taken out of it, it will pack so close in the pot as to leave room for very little water, so that reason would dictate that 8 or 10 hours is sufficient to boil the pot dry. But the teacher thinks that the sauce will not be boiled enough, as she has ordered the beef to be taken up till it is better boiled, and to add red wine, yolks of eggs, butter, and flour, and when it is enough, to pour it over the meat. Though many rumps, sirloins, and beef buttocks are destroyed, yet it's much if you keep the pot bottom from burning. In page 37, the lady's beef collops are made thus. They are to be 10 minutes in scalding water with sweet herbs and sent to table. Next are stewed beef steaks. First, stew the steaks in water, wine, butter, flour, and herbs, then to flour and fry them. To fry beef steaks. Take half a pint of ale that is not bitter, and fry them in rump steaks. Her second way is to fry them in butter, as much as will grease the pan, to cut off the fat and fry it by itself, and the lean by itself. Another way to do beef steaks is to half-broil them, then put them in a stew pan with pepper, salt, gravy, and butter rolled in flour, and let them stew half an hour. But her rolled beef steaks exceed. For 4 beef steaks there are to be forcemeat made of the flesh of a large fowl, a pound of veal, half a pound of cold ham, the kidney fat of a loin of veal, sweetbread cut in pieces, the yolks of 4 eggs, an ounce of truffles, morels, pepper, salt, and half a pint of cream. These she pounds all together and lays upon the steaks, which in my opinion will be about 10 pounds of forcemeat to her 4 beef steaks, and is a sufficient quantity of forcemeat for 20 dishes. The kidney fat of a good loin of veal, by my computation, must weigh 3 pounds. The flesh of a large fowl, I call a turkey, 3 pounds. A pound of beef suet, veal sweetbread, half a pound of veal, and half a pound of ham. Eggs, cream, truffles, morels, herbs, and seasoning, I call a pound. This makes up the above computation, of which I propose to make 5 very good dishes, 3 of which substantial, with the help of a pound of spice and a pound of flour. There can be no less than 1.5 pounds of beef, to roll 2.5 pounds of forcemeat in each steak. For the 4 steaks I have 6 pounds of beef, of which I make a very good ragout. The kidney fat of the loin of veal will make stuffing for the turkey's crop, and forcemeat to the other dishes. The pound of veal and half pound of bacon, with the help of the forcemeat, will make a side dish of Scotch collops. The sweetbread, with half an ounce of the truffles and morels, will make a fricassee. The pound of beef suet, cream, and the eggs, with the pound of flour and a pound of fruit, will make a hunter's pudding. The other half ounce of truffles and morels, with forcemeat, balls, mushrooms, and the gravy, that the lady orders to the beefsteaks, I thus divide. 3 half gills of it I give to the ragout, the other half gill to the Scotch collops, and white sauce to the fricassee. So I let my ragout at the head, my roast turkey at the foot, the hunter's pudding in the middle. One side is the collops, the fricassee the other. All these crammed together would be a surfeit. Separate them in the above manner, and they may appear before a nobleman. Reason is a notable instructor in cookery. It teaches the professed cook to have mercy on the master's property, and not wilfully to destroy his substance, by making such havoc as beefsteaks have done in all the shapes now mentioned, for none of them are fit to appear at the table of a gentleman, and to see the beef defaced, and so shamefully wasted, would be a great crime in any person not to detect. In page 43 is to roast ox palates. To boil them tender and cut them in slices 2 inches long. to lard half with bacon, to have 3 pigeons, 3 chicken peepers, to be filled with forcemeat, and nicely larded, to spit them thus, a bird, a sage leaf, and a piece of bacon, till all is spitted. To lard coxcombs. Parboil oysters and lambstones with bacon. Spit and roast them with sage leaf and bacon between them. Baste them with bread grated, the yolks of eggs, and nutmeg, all the time they are roasting. Now the query is, how these tender lambstones and coxcombs, but more especially the larded oysters, will endure the buffets of the bread and eggs. The oysters will baste to pieces, and beyond art to keep them on the spit, although the task will be hard to lard a parboiled oyster. Yet if large, it may be done. But where to find a stomach to digest these larded oysters with bacon will be the greatest hardship. In page 50, to bake lamb and rice. Take a neck and loin of lamb, and half roast it. Boil half a pound of rice in a quart of gravy, till it is thick, and stir in a pound of butter, the yolks of 6 eggs. Butter the dish all over, dip the steaks into melted butter. Lay them in the dish, and pour 3 yolks of eggs over the rice. Bake it in an oven half an hour. The half-pound of rice is buttered extravagantly. Boiled in gravy, it seems to be a pudding. But a gravy rice pudding is as uncommon as it seems to be unreasonable. For the pound of butter being stirred into the rice, the dish buttered over. The steaks dipped in melted butter will take another pound, and must make a great well of oil upon the rice and lamb, for it will be far out of the power of the rice to keep them from swimming. To me it seems to be a surfeit to a hungry ploughman. In page 52, to stew a lamb or calf's head. She takes for forcemeat 2 pounds of veal and 2 pounds of beef suet, to be chopped all together, 2 stale rolls to be grated, 4 yolks of eggs, 2 anchovies with other seasoning. But my advice is never to make half a pound of forcemeat for a calf's head, and half that quantity for a lamb's is sufficient. Although this lady teacher has between 5 or 6 pounds of forcemeat, besides a gill of oysters, mushrooms half a pint, truffles, morels, and more mushrooms, it is very great extravagancy. In page 54 is bombarded veal. Out of a fillet of veal, cut 5 lean pieces as thick as your hand, to which is ordered 5 sheep tongues to be larded. Then make a well-seasoned forcemeat of veal, bacon, ham, anchovy, and to make another tender forcemeat of veal, beef suet, mushrooms, spinach, parsley, thyme, sweet marjoram, winter savory, green onions, pepper, and mace. The well-seasoned is to be baked for the middle. The other is to be filled by way of Bologna sausage, to boil it and then cut and fry it. So there is forcemeat baked, boiled, and fried. Thus, by mismanagement, the vulgar in this country often are sufferers. For when their market is made, they will have roasted, boiled, and baked. But in the latter end of the week they suffer hunger, and indeed I cannot help comparing the lady's bombarded veal to vulgar extravagancy. Scotch collops à la Françoise. Cut a leg of veal into very thin collops, and lard them with bacon, and pour boiling ale over them to make out the blood. To take out the blood, to pour the ale off into a basin, to fry the veal in butter, the collops laid in a dish with toasted bacon round it, the ale to be put in a stewpan with a glass of wine, nutmeg, pepper, 2 anchovies, and a piece of butter. This is monstrous sauce, for there is neither gravy nor water in it, but ale and wine thickened with yolks of eggs, butter, and anchovies. In page 56 are larded Scotch collops. A fillet of veal is to be cut into thin slices. The skin and fat is to be cut off. Lard them with bacon, fry them brown, pour out all the butter, lay the collops on a dish, take a quarter of a pound of butter, melt it in the pan, and strew it in a handful of flour. Stew it till they be brown, and put 3 pints of gravy with herbs and onion. The collops to be put in and stewed half a quarter of an hour, and the yolks of 2 eggs, forcemeat balls, a piece of butter, some mushrooms. Stir all together a minute or 2 till all is thick. Reason says that the burnt butter and a handful of flour might make the gravy thick enough, without the yolks of eggs. When this teacher bid put by the burnt butter for use, she did not tell what quantity was to be put in to thicken and brown the gravy for a made dish. But if her readers have penetration, they may find out the quantity in larded Scotch collops, by which collops the gentry may see the teacher's care of giving their stomachs offence. In her calf-head surprise, the teacher proposes a task that she cannot perform herself, if she do it as she has prescribed to others, which is to bone the head and fill it with a ragout, as in the form it was before. It is to be filled with sweetbreads, coxcombs, truffles, morels, mushrooms, artichoke bottoms, asparagus tops, stewed in gravy seasoned, cream, yolks of eggs, and white wine added to the ragout, to keep it stirring one way for fear of turning, making it thick and smooth with butter and flour. This choice collected ragout with 20 forcemeat balls is to be put into the head, and then to be fastened with fine skewers, forcemeat laid over it, and the yolks of eggs, pieces of butter over all the head, to be baked 2 hours in an oven. Indeed, my opinion is that this calf's head surprise very well brooks its name, and plainly makes it manifest the teacher's art of cookery. For if she had but made a trial, she would then have seen into the error of her imagination. Can a reasonable person believe that this ragout could have the strength of the bones of the calf's head to bear it up in the form it was before the bones was taken out? For if she had the true art of cookery, she would not have made this choice collection of tender rarities into a ragout, ready for dishing up, thickening it with cream and eggs, giving orders to turn it one way, for fear of breaking, and after it is smooth and thick, to put it into the raw calf's head to bake 2 hours, during which time what must become of the thick, smooth sauce? Would not the yolks of eggs break it into tears of envy for the indignity done the ragout? What was the ornament of every dish is now become stuffing for a calf's head, which instead of raising it into its form, makes it an object of infamy. The forcemeat, all bedaubed and baked upon it, must appear at the table as if the head was scabbed, and the rivers of tears from the ragout, discharged out of the eyes, ears, and mouth, must have the symptoms of the glanders in the head. But when it is cut up, what a hodgepodge will the baked ragout make in their various colours! A gentleman critic, when he sees the scabbed head appear at the table, would swear it had been seized with the plague, by the botches, vials, and marks of violence upon it. In page 59, a ham à la braise. Slices of beef and bacon, herbs and roots, are laid in the bottom of a kettle, upon which lies the ham, with the fat side uppermost, which is ordered to be covered with slices of beef, bacon, herbs, and roots, to be covered close with a lid and pasted. Fire to be put under and over it, to be stewed 12 hours with a slow fire. A ham indeed may be à la braised, but it will take a large quantity of slices of beef and bacon to keep it gently boiling 12 hours in the juice of this beef and bacon, as there is no water ordered. A middling ham will weigh 14 pounds. beef and bacon to discharge as much juice as will stew the ham 12 hours, fire under and over it, the least that I can compute is 6 stone of beef and bacon, and if there is, after it has stewed 12 hours, a pint of gravy, it will be surprising. When the fat is skimmed off, if the fat and gravy will part, as ham fat is more clammy than any other fat. The teacher has recommended this liquor to be sauce for a ragout to the ham, which she says will do as well as essence of ham. It is a strange essence, but the pernicious part of the strength of the ham is so strong that a hungry hound from the field would refuse it. But since this is so plain a demonstration, who could believe that a lady would prescribe a dish so extravagant and likewise sauce fit to surfeit a sow? The excellency of the teacher's taste and fancy is further set forth by various ways of dressing a pig. The pig is to be skinned up to the ears, and a good plum pudding batter to be made of milk, eggs, flour, and beef fat. The skin to be filled and bacon in the form of a pig. But what would this artist say if the eggs make the pudding rise in the baking and leap out of the skin? Had she not better have boiled it in a bag than to have robbed it of its skin for a bag for her pudding? Although she has told how to dispose of the 4 quarters by roasting them with well cresses and mint sauce, or to fry them with spinach, or ragout it for a top dish, the first course, or a bottom dish, the second, or white fricassee it for a top or side dish, the second course. But after all, it would have been better roasted, with the favourite piece, even the skin, beautifully crisped. Next, it is to be skinned and filled with forcemeat, made of 2 pounds of young pork fat and lean, 2 pounds of veal, the same to fill it, and sew it up, and either roast or bake it, after the skin is taken off. Query: how will this pig's belly hold the 4 pounds of pudding? And will not its weight give it a fall into the dripping pan? Or you may have a very good pie of it, as you see in the chapter for pies. Or you may spit and let it roast till it is thoroughly warm, then cut it into 20 pieces and stew them in a pint of white wine and a pint of strong broth. Or cut off the head and divide the quarters and lard them with bacon, and lay a leaf of fat bacon at the bottom of the kettle, upon which lay the pig's head, and the 4 quarters, bay leaves, lemon, currants, parsnips, parsley, and cover all with bacon, stewed in strong broth. A pig matelote. The pig to be quartered, to be put into a stewpan, upon slices of bacon, to be covered with more slices of bacon, to be stewed in a bottle of wine, and when it is half done, cut 2 large eels in 6 inches lengths, stew them with a dozen of boiled crawfish, scum the fat off the liquor that they were stewed in, add to it a pint of strong gravy, thickened with burnt butter. A pig like a fat lamb. The pig is to be trussed up like a lamb. When it is cut through the middle, and skinned, parboil it. Then throw parsley over it. Roast and drudge it. Let your sauce be 1/2 pound of butter, and a pint of cream, stewed all together till it is smooth. To roast a pig with the hair on. Cut off its feet, and truss it. Prick up the belly. Spit it. Lay it to the fire, but take care not to scorch it. And when the skin begins to rise up in blisters, pull off the skin and hair, and also baste it with butter and cream, or 1/2 pound of butter, and a pint of milk. Drudge it with crumbs of bread, till it is 1/2 inch thick. The sauce is to be gravy and butter, or else 1/2 pound of butter, and a pint of cream. The pig newly killed, to be roasted with the skin on. A hard meat made of a pint of cream, yolks of eggs, grated bread, and beef suet, with seasoning made in a stiff pudding, Its belly is to be stuffed, and then to be spitted and laid to the fire. And drudge it with flour and lemon peel, and a pint of red wine in the dripping pan. And when it is enough, shake flour over, and send it up with a fine froth. The sauce in the dripping pan is to be thickened with butter. You are to take great care no ashes fall into the dripping pan, which may be prevented by making a good fire, which will not want any stirring. In my opinion, the teaching lady has tried all the ways of dressing a pig but the right one, and that she has not touched upon. And if her stomach can digest such food as she prescribes in her various ways of dressing a pig, it will be very hard to disturb it. For the various tortures she puts the poor pig to might give just suspicion that the teacher's desire is to waste and consume wealth by extravagancy, and create good business to the doctor. How often is the pig robbed of its skin, the most delicious morsel, and liked by everybody? Can cream and butter be proper sauce for the pig, or eels, crawfish, and so much bacon to stew with it? Who would bid roast a pig with the hair on, and order both skin and hair to be torn off together, even when it is roasting? Although it is rather more decent than to send it to the table with the hair on. But if I had seen the operation made on it at the first, without reading the orders, I would certainly have thought the cook had broke out of bedlam. For none in their senses could perform cookery so inconsistent with reason. In page 70, to dress a turkey or fowl to perfection. Bone them, and make forcemeat of the flesh of a fowl, a pound of veal, half a pound of beef suet, as much crumbs of bread, mushrooms, truffles, and morels cut small, sweet herbs and spices. All this is made into forcemeat, with yolks of eggs, and the turkey to be filled with. If extravagance will dress the turkey to perfection, it is not wanting, but it is attended with great hazard of being very imperfectly roasted. Then there is to stew a turkey brown the nice way. It is to be boned and filled with forcemeat, made thus: the flesh of a fowl, half a pound of veal, the flesh of 2 pigeons, a well-pickled or dried tongue, peel and chop it all together, and beat it in a mortar with the marrow of a beef bone, or a pound of kidney fat of a loin of veal. I say, a tongue is a good dish in any town in England. A pretty side dish may be made of a good fowl. 2 pigeons may make another by good management. And the true art of cookery, this half pound of veal, and the pound of the kidney fat of the loin of veal, may make another. But if you chop all these together, it is but one, and, in my opinion, a very awkward one too. For after all this stuffing is put into the turkey, it's to be put into a pot that will just hold it, so that the bones being taken out of it, and so much forcemeat stuffed in, and put into a pot that just holds it. And as there is no bones in it, it must be in the shape of the pot, because the pot will be a mold to shape it. As an additional and needless expense is mushrooms, truffles, morels, and oysters stewed, and put into little loaves to surround this turkey. Now I think I could make 6 tolerable dishes out of this intolerable one. I would boil my well-pickled tongue with turnips for the head, make a side dish of the fowl, paradise my pigeons for the middle. Of the half pound of veal and the pound of kidney fat, I would make a side dish of veal olives, my oysters the other side dish, and I would plain roast my turkey for the bottom. To force a fowl. The teacher has a particular and wonderful method. The skin is to be taken off the fowl first, and then the flesh picked from the bones, which is to be minced small, a pound of beef suet shred, and a pint of large oysters chopped, 2 anchovies, a shallot, grated bread, and sweet herbs shred and mixed together, and wrought up with yolks of eggs. All these are to be laid on the bones of the fowl, the skin to be drawn over all, and sewed up the back. The teacher ought to have ordered the skin to be tanned to enable it to stand the fire, and keep its burden from falling into the dripping pan, before it is half roasted. The teacher bids either boil it in a bladder of quarter of an hour, or roast it. But if it is to be boiled, is not a pint of oysters sufficient, without stewing more which she has ordered to be made for sauce for this fowl? By which you may see the wild extravagancy of her cookery in every article I mentioned, and all the dishes spoiled into the bargain. In page 73, Chicken Surprise is as surprisingly cooked as any of the rest. The chicken is to be roasted. For a small dish, 1 large fowl, the lean to be taken from the bone, stewed in 7 spoonfuls of cream, butter, and flour. Then is 7 slices of bacon to be cut, upon which is 7 rolls made of forcemeat, with a hollow place in each roll, into which is the stewed chicken to be put, covered with forcemeat and baked in an oven. The rolls are to be the height and bigness of French rolls, each of which, in my opinion, will take 1.5 pounds of forcemeat, a sufficient quantity for 20 made dishes, and all this for the lean flesh of a fowl to be baked in, and recommended by the teacher as a pretty side dish for the first course, summer or winter, when it can be got. I think you may have it all the year round if you please, for chickens or fowls are never out of season both at once, and it may be a large top or bottom dish. For 7 forcemeat rolls in the size as they are ordered will fill a large top dish with gravy sauce, and the expense of as much forcemeat may make 4 top or bottom dishes. In page 74, chickens roasted with forcemeat and cucumbers. For 2 chickens, take the flesh of a fowl, and 2 pigeons, and some slices of ham or bacon. Chop all well together. Soak the crumb of a penny loaf in milk, boil it, and when it is cool, mix all together, and season with herbs and spice. This is to stuff 2 chickens, and 4 cucumbers. With the rich fried gravy she makes the sauce. Far exceed the price of the chickens. Page 79 is to dress a duck with green peas. A deep stew pan to be put over the fire, with fresh butter, into which is the duck to be put, and turned 2 or 3 minutes. Then is the fat to be put out, and 1/2 pint of gravy put to it, with 2 lettuces cut small, a bundle of sweet herbs, and a pint of peas. Cover your pan close, let them stew 1/2 hour. Then put mace and nutmeg. Thicken it with butter and flour, or with the yolks of eggs and cream, 3 spoonfuls. Would not any reasonable person think that a pint of green peas and 2 lettuces, stewed 1/2 hour in 1/2 pint of gravy, would be thick enough, if not over thick? I should think that it would have rather wanted to be made thinner, than to have eggs and cream to thicken it. For to me, the cream and eggs would make a very odd figure mixed with stewed lettuces, green peas, and a duck. In page 83 is a goose à la mode. Skin and bone the goose. Take the fat off it. Do a fowl the same way. Boil a dried tongue. Put the fowl and tongue into the goose. Season all with salt, pepper, and mace. Sew it up in the same form it was before, and put it into a little pot that will just hold it. Put 2 quarts of beef gravy to it, a bundle of sweet herbs, an onion, slices of ham, or good bacon, between it and the fowl. Let it stew an hour, and when it begins to boil, take it up. Add to the gravy red wine, sweetbread of veal, mushrooms, butter, and flour. Now after all this expense, the goose is ill-used, so is the tongue and fowl, for it would have been much better roasted with its skin, bones, and fat on it. I say this large fine goose is very ill-used, for its own gravy is sufficient for sauce, with apples boiled, a little vinegar, and mustard, which will not exceed 2d. The other stuffing and sauce will cost 6 shillings. Yet at the same time, the teacher would have herself thought thrifty by adding "Nota bene" to boil the bones of the goose and fowl in the gravy. In page 92 is to dress partridges à la braise. Lard two brace of partridges with bacon. Grate pepper, salt, and mace on them. Lay in a few slices of bacon, beef, and veal in the pan, upon which lay your partridges with carrots, onions, and sweet herbs. The breasts of them are to be downwards, slices of beef and veal laid over them. Stew them 8 minutes over a slow fire, then give the pan a shake and put a pint of boiling water to them. Stew them half an hour, and then take up the birds and put in a pint of thin gravy. Boil it to half a pint. Then take a veal's sweetbread, truffles, morels, fowl's livers, and coxcombs, stewed in a pint of good gravy half an hour, adding artichoke bottoms, asparagus tops, and mushrooms. Add the other gravy to this. Put in your partridges to heat, and if it is not thick enough, take butter and flour. Toss it up. Or if you'll be at the expense, take veal and ham cullis. For garnishing 2 roasted partridges and the flesh of a large fowl, a little parboiled bacon, some marrow or beef suet cut fine, mushrooms chopped small, truffles, artichoke bottoms, mace, pepper, nutmeg, salt, and sweet herbs chopped fine, the crumb of a 2-penny loaf soaked in hot gravy. Mix all well together with the yolks of 2 eggs. Make your panes on paper of a round figure and the thickness of an egg. Form them with the point of a knife, which must be dipped in the egg yolk in order to shape them. Then neatly bake them 1/4 of an hour in a quick oven. Now, I think I could make a dinner for 8 gentlemen and ladies, with the separate ingredients that are prescribed to partridges à la braise, partridges panes, to garnish, etc. In the following manner I make the entertainment. With the slices of veal that are under and above the partridges, I make a dish of Scotch collops with some of the slices of bacon that is under and over the partridges, the pint of thin gravy, a little of the seasoning, the mushrooms that are first prescribed, and the slices of beef that are laid under and over them. I make a very good beefsteak pie. The value of the overplus bacon will make the crust. The fowl's livers and coxcombs will be a fricassee that may appear at a prince's table. A veal sweetbread, if it be a very good one, by the help of truffles, morels, and half of the pint of strong gravy the other. The other half of the coxcombs and fowl's livers, boiled asparagus, toast, and butter is a side dish. The crumbs of a 2-penny loaf will make a very good pudding. The gravy that is soaked in will make a very good soup, by the help of the herbs and roots that are ordered to the partridges. A ragout of artichokes is a pretty dish. The large fowl and mushroom sauce cannot be objected to for a top dish. And the best of all is 3 brace of partridges, in their natural shape and taste, roasted with buttered crumbs. So thus I place my dinner. The large fowl and mushroom sauce boiled at the head, Scotch collops at the foot, the soup in the middle. One side is a fricassee of fowl's livers and coxcombs, toasts and asparagus the other. The second course is my 6 roasted partridges at the top, beefsteak pie at the bottom, pudding in the middle. One side is the sweetbread, ragout artichokes the other, and has gravy sufficient for all. Besides the hot gravy, she orders the bread to be soaked in. She adds, if you will be at the expense, thicken it with veal and ham cullis, but says she, it will be full as good without. In that, I think her very right, for the taste of the partridges were so barbarously destroyed before the veal and ham cullis, which was no further required than to add to the surfeit and enlarge the expense. In page 93 is a stewed pheasant. She bids the pheasant be stewed in veal gravy till there is enough for sauce, and to parboil artichoke bottoms, and to roast the blanched chestnuts. and to roast and blanch chestnuts, and add to this sauce, with mace, pepper, and white wine, and fried forcemeat balls. Pheasant à la braise. She bids lay a layer of beef all over your pan, then a layer of veal, a piece of bacon, carrot, onion, 6 cloves of mace, a spoonful of pepper, a bundle of sweet herbs, then to lay in the pheasant, then a layer of veal, and a layer of beef to cover it. Then to set it on the fire 6 minutes. Next to pour in 2 quarts of boiling water. Let it stew softly an hour and a half. Then orders to take up the pheasant and keep it hot, and let the gravy boil till there is about a pint. Then strain it off, and put it in again, and put in a veal sweetbread, some truffles and morels, some livers of fowls, artichoke bottoms, asparagus tops, 2 spoonfuls of catsup, 2 of red wine, butter, and flour. Shake all together. Put in your pheasant. Let them stew all together, with a few mushrooms, about 5 or 6 minutes more. Then take up your pheasant, and pour your ragout all over with a few forcemeat balls. You may lard it if you choose. Beautiful bird, how sorry I am to see thee so tossed up with inconsistencies. I lived in a family that took such delight in their pheasants, that neither master nor lady would suffer the gamekeeper to shoot any wild fowl in the wood, where the pheasants inhabited, for fear of frightening them into the neighbouring woods. That gentleman had been at some expense in procuring a brood of them, which he took such care to preserve and increase, that there was never one seen at his table, although none in the north entertained more grandly than he did. He would let his company see his fine birds, but at the same time said they must not taste them. He told a nobleman that these birds had been very safely protected by him, for he had let them increase and multiply these 9 years, without taking one bird out of their flock. And as long, said he, as I'm master of that wood, none shall disturb them. They are my harmony in the summer mornings and evenings. Had he ordered a pheasant to have been dressed, how far would he have been disappointed had it been stewed with chestnuts and artichoke bottoms, or à la braised with so many strong mixtures which would not leave the least natural taste, beside the unnecessary trouble and extravagant expense. She says, for a roasted pheasant, have gravy in the dish and bread sauce in plates, or scalded well cresses laid under it, or make celery sauce stewed tender, strained and mixed with cream, and poured into the dish. She says a Frenchman would order fish sauce to them, but then you'll quite spoil your pheasants. But I say that celery and cream are not so proper sauce as some fish sauce is, for many use plain butter for fish sauce, which would be more proper sauce than celery, cream, and scalded well cresses to surfeit pheasants. Her fancy extends itself to great lengths in wild fowl spoiling. In page 95, snipes in a surtout, or woodcocks. Take forcemeat made with veal, beef suet, an equal quantity of crumbs of bread, mace, pepper, salt, parsley, and sweet herbs. Mix them with the yolk of an egg. Lay some of this meat round the dish. Then lay in the snipes, being first drawn and half roasted. Take care of the trail, chop it, and throw it all over the dish. Says she, take good gravy, according to the bigness of your sourtout, some truffles, morels, mushrooms, sweetbread cut to pieces, artichoke bottoms cut small, and let all stew together. She adds, take the yolks of 2 or 3 eggs, according as you want them. Beat them up with white wine. Stir all together one way. When it is thick, let it cool, and pour it into the surtout. Take the yolks of a few hard eggs, mace, pepper, and salt, and after all, cover it all over with forcemeat. Rub the yolks all over it to collar, and send it to an oven, and, she says, half an hour will do it. This surtout, to me, looks something like a forcemeat puff paste pie, dressed very cunningly, contrived as the forcemeat is laid round the dish. And as this teacher says, cover it with forcemeat, so reason would think that the time that this forcemeat required baking would be sufficient to bake the snipes. For the bread, suet, herbs, and other ingredients will not roll out so thin as puff. For the bread, suet, herbs, and other ingredients will not roll out so thin as puff paste, very far from it. Then who in common reason would order the guts to be pulled out of snipes, and to half roast them, and then to bake them? I've seen a wager on the weight of a snipe, and it would not weigh 2 ounces, which it did not. Next, the teacher gives orders to boil snipes or woodcocks. Says she, boil them in good strong broth, or beef gravy made thus. So summons a large collection of beef, onions, herbs, mace, cloves, pepper, and while the snipes are boiling, stew the guts and livers. With part of the gravy the snipes are boiled in. In my opinion, this lady teacher pronounces double destruction to snipes and woodcocks. First, in surtout. Secondly, in boiling them in such variety of mixtures, to rob them of their natural taste. The most esteemed tame fowl may be sometimes masqueraded in cookery, where they are more plentiful, but wild fowl are rarities, that be very ill to catch hold of at some seasons of the year, and in their natural shapes grace every table, and a dinner is very seldom thought elegant that has not wild fowl plain roasted. This teacher puts great hardships on the ignorant maids by giving them very unnecessary trouble, but far greater the imposition on their masters, whose fortunes suffer greatly by extravagance, and if they eat those odd mixtures and jumbles, they will consume health as fast as their wealth. In page 97, to scare a hare. This teacher bids lard your hare, and put a pudding in her belly, and then put her in a pot or fish kettle, with 2 quarts of strong-drawed gravy, 1 of red wine, a lemon cut, a faggot of sweet herbs, nutmeg, pepper, salt, and cloves, to stew till it be 3 parts done. Then it is to be taken out of the liquor and put into a dish, and strewed over with crumbs of bread, chopped sweet herbs, grated lemon peel, and half a nutmeg, to be boiled and browned before the fire. Then, says she, in the meantime, take the fat of the gravy, and thicken it with the yolk of an egg. Take 6 boiled hard eggs, chopped small, some pickled cucumbers cut thin, mix these with the sauce, and pour into the dish. But I say that a quart of wine would intoxicate a man, much more a hare, my only favourite. I like the hare so well that I am very angry to see her so much abused, for I never robbed her of her natural taste, but showed the art of cookery in preserving it. How many mixtures, and what various colours, red, white, green, and yellow sauce, and extravagance to a degree. She adds that a fillet of mutton, or neck of venison, may be done the same way. And if a fillet of the largest mutton weighs a pound, it exceeds the weight of any I ever saw. Now I think she should have told the illiterate what part of the mutton she calls the fillet, if she knows it herself. The fillet is the collop that lies in the inside of the loin of mutton, next to the chain, and if the ignorant maid has of herself found it out, it will not be to her master's profit. Although her mistress says that you may do rabbits the same way, but instead of beef it must be veal gravy, and the red wine turned into white wine, adding cucumbers for mushrooms.